The Baja Process is a 9-month-long investment of engineering dedication to create an off-road vehicle that is ultimately pushed past its limits in a 3-day-long international competition. What is Baja? Baja is a Society of Automotive Engineers club that many universities around the world support. The task is to use engineering principles to design an off-road vehicle that can tackle any terrain that it encounters. The entire process must be documented well to prove that the university built the vehicle. The process begins with brainstorming different ideas of overall car design. There are 6 main systems to every vehicle: frame, drivetrain, controls, steering, suspension, and ergonomics. The frame consists of every tube that makes up the vehicle, to which every other system is mounted. The drivetrain consists of the transmission and clutches. Controls deal with everything that involves a throttle and brakes. Steering is all components from the steering wheel to the front tires. Suspension deals with how the vehicle absorbs impact. And finally, ergonomics is for the driver. It is how everything feels when sitting in the driver's seat, whether it's the steering wheel position, the seat slope, or the legroom. Performance of each system is the most important part of the entire competition. If the car cannot drive, it cannot compete. Once these basic systems are understood, it is time for the student engineers to begin the design process. The next step is to move to the computer lab and begin drafting the systems in a 3D modeling software. Anything that will appear on the final product will be modeled in a 3D modeling program such as SolidWorks. The systems are designed independently for organization purposes, but eventually every piece will be assembled into an assembly. The assembly will be identical to the machine that will be built in the shop. Because the car is limited to a 10 horsepower Briggs & Stratton engine, weight is one of the most important factors in car design. The most weight can be cut from efficient frame and suspension design, followed by a light and efficient drivetrain. Aesthetics are important for design competition, but must not be put before performance. Every component of the vehicle must comply with the guidelines that are laid out in the Society of Automotive Engineers Mini Baja Rules Guide. The most stringent rules apply to the frame because it will take the impact in the event of a crash, which happens more often than not. Driver safety is the #1 concern for the competition sponsors. There are many things to consider when designing the car, such as, will this work and not interfere with the other members of the vehicle? Or, can this piece be manufactured? After hundreds of hours of head scratching and design scrapping, a final print will be selected. This is where the fun begins. Final step in the Baja process is fabrication and testing. The parts drawn into the SolidWorks will either be machined in the shop, outsourced to a company that specializes in the part, or, rarely, purchased. The few parts on the car that are purchased are shocks, tires, and lights. Everything else is fabricated according to specifications. Machining precision is a skill learned at this step. The parts all have tolerances, but it is important to be as exact as possible so that the parts will fit together exactly like they appear in the model. Many tools and machines are needed to make the parts on the car, so sometimes a local company who has the equipment must be contacted to fabricate parts that cannot be made in-house. Certain systems, especially drivetrain and suspension, need extensive testing. The best teams will have a minimum of 5 hours of clutch testing alone to figure out optimum horsepower to torque ratios for racing. Suspension tests include dropping the vehicle from a certain height and evaluating the distance that the shocks travel and the angle of the tires at the time of impact. This simulates coming off of a jump. The most important test of all is simply driving the vehicle to get a feel for how it will handle certain track conditions. This entire process concludes with a road trip across America to race the Baja car against universities from countries all over the world.